And so it's Thursday, November 14th, 2024, and this is the biweekly FoodOn Curation meeting. I don't have any agenda items today. We're going to try to focus these meetings on just people bringing forth their agenda pieces. Now we do have Tim Almanak. How do you pronounce your last name, by the way?
Alamanchuk.
Alamanchuk. Okay, right. Who's sitting in more from an ecology restoration ontology perspective, wanting to see how our ontology curation meetings work. So, Anisha, I was wondering, do you have anything that you wanted to bring to the group in terms of the fish seafood template discussion?
Mm, I mean, I don't have any issues right now, but I can just quickly show you the worksheet where I'm currently working on if anyone is interested in that.
Okay.
Yeah, if in case we don't have anything on the agenda, then or if that's okay.
Well, what I'll
Just
do
give me.
is I will go take a look at the food on issues section. And
Okay.
for those who are sort of new to the group, I'll scan over some of the issues there, see how we can handle them.
Right. Okay,
Great.
I can just quickly show you that spreadsheet then.
Sure.
Okay. So this is firstly, this is the document food on animal tables. And in that, we already have this animal template, which we created early this year, or we finalized early this year. And then animal parts species list, animal parts ID mapping. And now I have created here seafood parts. This is the seafood template we currently have. And it has these minimal fields in it. Fish food, suppose this organism food product. This is not a minimal field, and we will not be creating it for every single species. Instead, it will be either I have just popped in the existing seafood species, which we currently have in FoodOn, or if it will be based on the request, if anyone wants, particularly for anything, then we can add those here.
Yeah. So
Other than
just to explain what that means is, so we will have seafood food product categories, but we'll take individual kinds of fish and we'll connect them to a more general fish kind or seafood kind food product. So we might have 5, 10, 20 different fish underneath, say, a salmon food product.
Yeah, and so in that way, we don't need to create like Pacific salmon food product. Instead, that will be underneath salmon food product as a general category.
Right.
Yeah, so right now I've just added the existing food products. I'm not sure if that's the idea to add, but I think that's the only way I could see that we'll have to add the existing food products here. Other than that, we have organism material. It means that any X fish material. That's a minimal field. So the idea is to create that for all the fish species where we want, or which we'll be adding in the species list. Then we have organism. So those fish which already has NCBI taxon, those will be populated in this field. And the ones where we'll be using food on ID, those will go in this one. Suppose this one, like African freshwater cichlid, I couldn't find any NCBI taxon for that, so I just added that in this field where we will be using food on ID instead of NCBI taxon ID. Live fish, we don't need that right now, so I don't think so I have added any fish species in this one right now currently, but this is something I think that we'll be having a general term in FoodOn, which will be live fish, instead of creating it for every single species. This fish carcass that will be created, this is a minimal field again. These blue ones, you can see the highlighted ones, these are the minimal fields. That means those will be created for every single species, where we will say that we want to create those in the seafood part species list. This is the species list we currently have, and it has around 1931 species right now. Most of them are the ones which have been imported from FDA with the help of Amanda. She was very helpful in importing those from FDA. So suppose if we want to create those terms for rainbow trout, so I've added true in this compiled field. So the script will only run on the specific species where the compiled will be equal to true.
And
And
so, and you're just sort of spelling out that you can add rows that we're working on curating. And then finally, when we know we've got all the curation info, then we can put compile true.
yeah.
Right. Because there's actually going to be over 3,000 fish probably or seafood items, 2 to 3,000 in FoodOn as a result of all this. And FAO has a list of 12,000 fish taxonomically distinct across the globe. So even if we have a set of categories that classes that FoodOn is pumping out in the all category, that can be a sizable number of terms. We can be talking eight classes created for every single fish, or maybe six, but that means 6 times 3,000, 18,000 terms at the very least as a result of this.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, suppose just for an example, suppose if I take an example of Atlantic wolffish, so it says that compile is equal to true. So that means that when I'll run the script, this will cross the species with all these fields where I have added, first I'll have to check. I don't think so. I have this Atlantic wolffish here. So it means that it will not be creating Atlantic wolffish food product. So it will create Atlantic wolffish material, and that's because I have all in this field. All means that it will run on all the species where the compile is equal to true. Similarly, that will create, it already has an NCBI taxon, so so it will be generated through this field, which is just the organism like Atlantic wolffish and like a whole Atlantic wolffish. And then we will be having this carcass. So it means that just for the single species, this script is currently creating around 6 or 7 maybe terms there. So these are also the minimal terms. So it means this will also be creating piece of Atlantic wolffish, piece of Atlantic wolffish raw, piece of Atlantic wolffish meat. So this is something which I need to discuss with Amanda at some point, that is it okay to have piece of Atlantic wolffish meat or like any piece of X fish meat for most of the species?
Yeah, I think that would be fine.
Okay.
I mean, it's a question of whether we should go that extra step of adding meat
Yeah.
as opposed to just piece of Atlantic wolffish
Right.
and raw. Is it a useful distinction across the board to also have this meat thing? Or should we somehow just use piece of Atlantic wolffish and raw as our only pre-composed term? I'm thinking here like fillets or and so on.
Yeah. In some cases, I had to add this piece of organism meat or X meat, something we can say, because the language annotation specifically said that it's derived from like skeletal tissue or something like that, muscle tissue. So for those, I had to add this one, but I'm not sure if we should make it a minimal field.
Mm-hmm. Across the board.
If I could chime in, if you're already having
Yeah.
6 minimal fields, which are going to cross, it's already thousands and thousands of terms. So
Yeah.
any one less minimal field does make things easier. And I also think that we should have clear guidance for annotators. Been having some conversations with the RIVM in the Netherlands, the Ministry of Health and Environment that does agriculture related food and composition data. And they're still a little bit struggling with, how is it that we would best annotate a food on term using this new system? So if we can provide them documentation on like, this would be a good class to use, the like piece of X organism raw or piece of X organism meat, and explain exactly why and how which one is to be used. I think that would be really helpful for them. Also for initiatives like the PTFI, even with the USDA mappings, et cetera. So I think if we have that in documentation, it'll help a lot too.
Right. Okay. So when it comes to USDA, Any idea when they say they suppose, just for an example, I'm taking the same example of Atlantic bullfish. So if that's Atlantic bullfish raw, so do they actually mean that they want like piece of that or piece of meat that they are referring to? Any idea?
I would have to go and look at the samples within USDA. Usually Foundation Foods is measuring the edible portion, but that might not always be the case.
Okay. Okay, yeah, because I don't have any information about that. It's just the samples we have that this is this fish raw, but I wasn't really sure if I should map them to the just piece. I mean, that makes sense to me because it could be anything, then probably we just to be on the safe side. But in case if that specifically refers to meat, then we can use that.
I would think for most USDA samples, piece of organism or organism raw would be sufficient. But I guess what's the difference with meat? The 16, row 16. Like what's the
It could be
difference?
Yeah, I mean the piece of
Because I think you should just meat. Does it mean with skin or without skin, for example? Is it more specific, or I don't really, I don't think it is useful, but perhaps you need this sometimes. But I think usually raw will be sufficient. A raw piece
Okay.
of organism, I think so, but I have no
yeah, it's all about
evidence.
which extra little descriptors do we have to add to a sample in order to pinpoint what it is. Piece of fish can include organs, eyes, fins, gallbladder, yeah. So bones, we're not committing to whether bones are in or out in this piece of fish. Over on the piece of fish meat, we're also not committing to whether there are bones in it or not. So you'd actually even have to drill down to boneless, like boneless meat in order to guarantee that. But usually we would just want to add that as a bag of term piece. Unless, say, we've got sushi cut, where there's 200 different kind of cuts, and they're very specific about whether there are any bones in the meat or not. So these classes here are about ones that would most helpfully apply across the board to all fish, all seafood.
Well, yeah, in that case, I don't see an argument for making meat a 16 a required row or a minimal row.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If someone can come up with an argument for it, then maybe turn it on. But until then, don't because it's just making more.
Yeah, and this actually relates to one other thing, which was that I think we have fillet underneath piece of
Yeah.
meat.
Yeah, that's
Right.
right.
And
So we have
that is the number one common term, and yet it doesn't apply to all fish, all seafood. So that's why. But if we need to add fillet for a fish, then we probably need to have its parent as well.
Yeah.
Piece of this organism meat.
Yeah. If that's the parent, then it's going to be needed to compile. Yeah.
Right. So Kai, on Monday, we're going to be talking to you about a new idea that just popped up about how to organize these things on the script to run by you.
Okay.
It's just a little bit technical, so I don't want to bring it to the group.
Yeah. Sure.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, these are the fields currently we have in this fish template, and I'm currently working on this seafood parts ID mapping, where I'm just adding all the existing FoodOn terms in this sheet. Like suppose suppose that FoodOn already has abalone raw, but in the new template we don't have this field. Instead, we have piece of abalone raw. So just mapping it to the new terms right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Based on, sorry, yes, go ahead.
Well, I think we have do we have something like, we have lots of seafood terms. So it's kind of a bigger project just to put all the existing terms into this table, right?
Yeah.
Has Has the script, Anusha, the things that has that been helping you, or have you been doing a lot? Like, how's this going for you? Do you need more assistance on this? Like,
For particularly for the ID mapping sheet, or your
yeah, for the ID mapping, like, is the Sparkle thing helping, or do you need? Is this going to be sufficient? Is it not? Like, are you having struggles on this?
Yeah, I think so that with the Sparkle Query, I already extracted all the fish terms we have in FoodOn, but they're around 1,000 or so, and it's including all the invertebrates as well, not just fish. I mean, think about the old seafood things. The only thing is, I don't think so that the query can help me to map them with the new terms. It's just that I can just get all the existing data we have in
Yeah. No,
FoodOn.
that's what I did for the animal one.
Yeah.
I'd like made the
Okay.
huge list
Yeah.
and then manually kind of, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So far it's working fine. I think that I added many filters just to remove all the process terms, but it still is showing me some of those some of the terms where we have some processing done to them. So I couldn't remove those, but they're just few, not a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the worst thing to keep a few
Yeah.
of the ones that are processed or have a different pattern to show that there could be a different pattern, but
Yeah.
that we're not going to be doing that ever. I don't know, Damien, do you think that makes sense? Like, we don't want to deprecate things that are like the
Well, we certainly
anti.
won't. Yeah, won't be deprecating the process terms at all.
Yeah.
But in this round, yeah, this is a learning pass. So yeah, good to keep them in now. You're highlighting them in yellow or something, is that right? Or red? No.
So for in this sheet, I have not included any of the process term
Right.
because the idea is just to use the ones with the general one, I mean. So the yellow ones are just because I need to think about them a bit. Like suppose this is common whitefish, fillets and bits, raw. This is a different kind of labeling in FoodOn, so we'll have to choose the best labeling for or the best term for those. Similarly, like suppose crab, whole or pieces, shell on raw. So I mean, it's just that if you can see they're different there are different ways they are being labeled in FoodOn, crab meat fresh raw or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, so currently there are like around 1,000 terms in this spreadsheet, and I could just do I think 200 or 300. So it will take a lot of time to actually finish this off.
Right.
Yeah, so this is the template we're working on, and then we have some, as Damien said, that we have some technical things that maybe we can discuss next Monday in our meeting.
And
Great.
for Tim and well, I guess Cameron was on for a bit, not now. But, we're using a command line to convert each of these rows into one or more ontology terms. And that are used as an import file into our ontology. Okay. Any other questions about that from people?
Yes, I just want to ask a question. Do you have all the NCBI taxon so far, or just how many do you miss, or you have an idea?
So all the terms which we actually imported from FDA, the good thing is that they already have NCBI taxons. So I think Amanda really helped us to get all the NCBI taxons for them. They are around 2,000, but there's still many terms in FoodOn, like the general ones, like suppose whitefish or so, or tuna or something like that, where probably we'll be mapping them to the genus or something like that on the higher level. And we don't have a specific taxons for them. So I think that we'll be using FoodOn for those. Yeah, but currently I think I have like around 2,000 or so taxons in FoodOn.
Right. Yep. So this is big but necessary work. And then the plant template after that. Then we can make it to EFSA mapping. Okay. Thanks, Anusha.
Yes, because I think if I have the NCBI taxon on my side, or in the EFSA, we have the genus and the species most of the time. But we have to map to NCBI taxon, so we have a pivot to perhaps it will be easier than with the label.
Have you ever asked for a new NCBI taxon species? By the way, Magali,
Sorry, I don't understand.
have you actually ever asked NCBI to add a new taxon or species?
No,
me neither.
I
Isn't
have.
it- Has
When
anyone done it?
yeah, well, I mean, when I've named a new species, they just automatically generate one.
Isn't that with submission of certain types of data, or was it just?
Yeah,
Right.
if you, I mean, like it's always happened when I've deposited sequences
Yeah, right. So that's
for
my
like a
understanding
new
is it's
genus or a
only.
new species, then they'll just make one. We've asked them about making them for things that, but if they don't have a genetic representation, like any sequence, they're not going to put one in yet.
Right. So, yeah, so that's my understanding is that they only make new IDs for things that are a new entry in the sequencing database, which is what you're saying, I believe.
Yeah, I'm curious if that will ever change, if they'll have a greater ambition.
Based on conversations we've had with them, probably not,
Mhm.
because they're already overtaxed
Right.
with what they have.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
they're not looking for more work.
Yeah. All right.
Overtaxed. That was a good joke.
Oh, I just got it. Yeah, punny. All right. Okay. Thanks, Anusha. And so I guess maybe I'll share screen around an issue. FoodOn. So issues board. So for some of you, Tim, we host FoodOn on GitHub, and the ontology there has its file for the world to see up in the root folder. And that's where search engines go occasionally to check out its latest incarnation and to index the terms in it. Inside the GitHub repo, as well as a source ontology folder, and that's where the raw ontology file is, plus all of the imports constructed in various ways, manually or by an import script from other ontologies. And so lastly, we have to pay attention to this issues board for the GitHub. Occasionally things come in here that need to be addressed. And so, for example, Sarah, are you on the call this morning? Yes, has raised August 28th, missing fermented foods. And we do not have a consistent mapping of all the fermented foods. So this immediately becomes a bit of a project. So let's go take a look. So we've got cheese food product, which you can imagine, I think just about every cheese is a fermented food product, and yet there's probably no way to find out that unless we go to the cheese food product, dairy food product, but nothing saying that it's actually fermented food. So over to the fermented. Did I misspell that? Fermented meat, food fermented. Okay, so that's the that is the parent class that's taken a variety of terms, including the subclasses of fermented food. So I guess my first comment is sometimes FoodOn has classes with the word food product, and other times it doesn't. And the times that it doesn't, it's because we've taken a look at the category and realized it's a little bit redundant. We don't need to say the word food product. The intentional act of fermenting something in that category means that it is, yeah, it has attributes of a food product. So, one question is whether we even need the word food product or just product in a class. But at any rate, focusing on what Sarah was raising here. Right. So she's pointing out that this particular entry, although it doesn't say it's a food, there's no connection to fermented food through the hierarchy. When we imported this product from the Siren database, it came with these notes, these comments, Siren database annotations or comments. Solid curd lactic acid fermentation process. So it seems like we dropped this little fact. And I think one issue is that this annotation wasn't applied across the board to all of the cheeses. So how to categorize cheeses as fermented food products? So I guess my first question to the crowd is, are all cheeses fermented food products?
I think I did a little digging. I'm not sure if like some cheeses are just like salt brined. I believe posted a publication.
So that suggests
Mascarpone, maybe. I can't remember. I did like when I posted that. I checked it out.
okay.
Fermented milk, any cheese.
So that's suggesting that each particular cheese needs to have needs to be connected to fermented food or fermented cheese as a result of inspecting it to see if it is an exception or not. And so here's an example. Roquefort cheese didn't have that particular annotation in the Siren database, whereas sheep milk cheese did. And yet I think Roquefort is of the same class of fermented foods. So
I think any cheese has at least lactic acid fermentation at the very beginning of the process. And then what differs is the way you have the ripening or not. Then after the milk is transformed into curds and to cheese, you have then different kind of cheeses, but anyway, I think they're almost always a lactic acid fermentation in the milk.
Magali, the one example that I found was like mascarpone is like Italian sweet cream cheese, and it's like the acid is added, and so does it have to be like a microbial action of producing like a lactic acid bacteria producing the acid environment, or can you just add acid like lemon juice
Yes,
or
but
lactic acid?
mascarpone is a very specific cheese, and it is almost cream.
Right, it is. Yeah, so that's kind of like the
For me,
example I
but
found.
of course it is called a cheese, but yes, it's not
Is it cheese? Who knows?
okay, so Are we saying that mascarpone cheese is the only exception to this
The
whole?
cream cheese.
Is it really the only exception? It is not.
I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
But
Please,
at least for
tell me
Roquefort,
it's not an
at least,
exception.
at least for Roquefort, you can say that there is a lactic acid fermentation for Roquefort, even if it is oven milk.
Okay.
But you know, here it is said that mascarpone is made by adding bacterial culture.
Okay.
I think it's even for
Oh,
cream.
interesting. My
the-
AI is said differently.
The cream is a
Okay.
culture. Cream is there is some different kind of cream, but crème fraîche in France is the
I
culture
literally
cream.
asked Gemini the same question and it gave me a different answer.
Uh-oh.
Sorry.
All right, Sarah, do you have that answer on, or shall we just continue this discussion in the issue on the issue?
But I think we have some. I have made some literature exists on the. There is an interesting paper, but I don't know if my DOI is working now. I have some issue, but yes, we can rely on perhaps some literature, but we will. There is so many ways to make something, some cheese, so I don't know, but you have uncured. Uncured. Does it mean uncured? Does it mean unripened?
I think so. Yeah.
So there's some in the article that you sent, the periodic table of fermented foods, that say there are acid coagulated cheeses that occur without fermentation in South Asia.
Yes, of course, you can have the acidification process using acids or using lactic acid bacteria. And then you have to add some clothing agent. And this, depending on the proportion, you have different families of cheeses.
I've certainly made paneer just by adding vinegar to milk and then squeezing it, but letting it sit. I don't know if anyone would claim that fermentation is starting to happen in that, but it's not the main process for ending up with paneer 24 hours later.
Kind of like a farmer's cheese or something like that.
Yeah.
But can we define a fermented product is a product where a microbial agent is responsible of some transformation, at least?
Yes.
I think it is very generic. And for cheeses, at least there is always one kind of microorganisms acting as an agent for either for coagulation, clothing, or for for ripening.
Okay, so we've got a couple of things coming up here. Food fermented needs a definition. And fermentation. Okay, we've got various kinds of fermentation. Food fermentation as a process. Various ways of fermenting. And okay, so we've got enzymatic action as well as microbial. So this is a super broad definition and so my first wondering is whether cheese can have a more particular universal claim about the kind of fermentation it has. Is it always?
But I think if you have only enzymes, it is not a fermentation. You have to have a biological agent, a live biological agent.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Ask Gemini.
I don't trust her now.
We'll all be going to find our favorite AI just to make it supply the answer we want. Okay. It requires a biological agent. Okay, so action
Yes.
number one. I believe this AI over you. I
Thank
believe
you.
it. Oh yeah. So action item number one is that microorganisms, Wikipedia. I sort of believe Wikipedia, if not AI. Yeasts or bacteria, right? Microorganisms. So action item number one is that we need to change the FoodOn definition. So
So I don't think the part about the enzymes is technically wrong if it's just saying enzymes alone or if it's saying like
it's allowing,
extracellular enzymes from the microbial community.
yeah, it's allowing for enzymes alone. So we can just tweak the definition to say microbial activity with the
Which
possible.
involves enzymes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, of course you did enzymes, but I think the important the point is to have a live microorganism
Alive.
inside. Alive, yes.
Right. So we need to change this definition a little bit.
The and or is the
Yeah.
problem.
Food fermentation class needs definition. Up. So let's test out a slight adjustment. Vision. Fats are modified through microbial biological process. And now, how should we say enzymes are involved? Do we need to say anything about enzymes? Is that what makes fermentation in this food area unique, or is it a necessary distinguishing factor?
So I think, at least from this paper, it says that casein is hydrolyzed to taste active peptides and amino acids, which is like a hydrolysis. Could be enzyme motivated.
Enzyme motivated?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like, enzymes are just like catalysts, right? So it's either speeding up the hydrolysis or it's just water, like doing the hydrolysis.
Right.
I don't understand the question. For me, to answer your question, and Damien, I think that you have the microorganisms are making their jobs. Let's say they have their own metabolisms and they need to process some nutrient for them.
Yeah.
And they are making some enzymes. Either they are delivering enzymes into the milk, for example, or they consume inside the cheese. They are their own metabolisms, and they are making some other metabolites from the cheese.
Okay.
So we have different kind of enzymes of metabolic processes, but I don't think it is so important to precise here.
Right.
I think it is obvious that the microorganisms have some enzymatic process for their own metabolism.
Right. So is it important to mention microbial metabolic process? Can we say that instead of this more general biological?
Biological is more generic. I don't know. Metabolic is.
Metabolic, through a microbial metabolic process. So it's not that microbials are pushing things around, it's that their metabolism. I mean, if you wanted, you could throw, it sounds like you could throw the word microbial enzymatic metabolic process in there, but it sounds like metabolic is enough.
Yes. And anyway, it is a kind of biological process for me.
Right. Metabolic process is definitely a subclass of biological, so we wouldn't actually need to use the word biological. Okay. So that's like a beginning one action item. So it's up to any of us to poke holes in that, to look up fermentation in general. Oh, so here fermentation happens in rotting and other things. I've linked it to the word food fermentation. I'm actually a little bit wrong there. This is the process. Yeah, this is the process, food fermentation, right. Okay, so that's okay. This is the one we're modifying. Okay. So then it's the remaining question, open question is, are all cheeses fermented, or do we have a category of our cheese acid? Cheese.
Yes, you can have some, for example, you have the globula, the lactose, the serric protein can be coagulated using acid, and then you can have some cheese from.
Right. So do we call that curd? Curd is produced, not necessarily fermented, or is curd a fermented product?
Curd is not necessarily fermented, I think, because you can have acid coagulation. But
Okay.
most of the time you have some fermentation, but in the traditional product you have some fermentation. I think you can also have a mixed fermentation. Let's say you have the bacteria plus acid. You can add some acid.
Yeah, so we're talking about that inoculum. Right.
Yes, some, for example, citric acid from lemon juice.
Yeah, so curds, curds, I was getting
Curds, it's a coagulum.
right. Curds, well, the acid is the coagulant, and the curds are the what are
A
curds?
gel.
What?
It is a gel obtained from the milk.
Yeah. Only when milk sours.
But in fact, you have milk is a liquid and then curd is a gel.
Yeah, so these curds are not fermented necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Right. And paneer is made of curds. So we'll have to take a look.
Could you just have two top level classes?
Yeah,
One for like fermented cheeses and one for non-fermented cheeses?
right. Not. So thank you, Kai. That's where we were headed.
Just like you have some ripened cheese and non-unripened cheese.
Yeah. Okay. And I think we could probably say that all that maybe non-fermented cheese is a subclass of unripened cheese.
Um,
Okay, non-fermented cheese.
but usually we said, I am used to say unripened rather than unaged. I don't know if it is
Unripened.
usual for you, but
No, it isn't. Ignorant of the.
it's almost the same, but it's just a
Yeah, I'm familiar with that term.
Unaged or unripened? Whoever.
Unripened. Yeah, for cheeses.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So, more questions. First of all, this definition has the word food in it. And I made a mistake here. I didn't, I should have said food fermentation. There. To reference the parent class. Sorry, what is the parent class?
no. Yes, a food fermentation is a food process.
It's a food process, yeah.
It's a process.
So so the parent here is microbial enzymatic modification process at the moment. Now I'm imagining now, okay, so guess what? If you want to make chocolates with that creamy caramel center, you actually add enzymes into the caramel and put them inside the chocolate in a firm form, and then the enzymes soften them up. So we've actually got a situation here where we need to have a microbial the food fermentation is limited to the microbial side of this fence.
Yes, because you have also enzymatic modification process just.
Yes, right.
Uh,
So microbial modification process, food fermentation is just a more common name for that. So I guess we'll say, if we're following the Aristotelian definition here, then we would actually be saying a microbial enzymatic modification process in which
yeah, because
through
so you have to. Yeah.
oh, I changed the wrong one. Sorry. That's the current definition. The new definition would be see if that keeps the link. Yeah, might as well. Or fats are modified through a microbial. Ah, right. So we're immediately saying that we're just talking about the microbial process side. So this is a little clumsy, but it does match the semantics of what we want.
Yes, because the parent class, let's say it is a microbial or enzymatic, or it is
Yes.
and. It is or and. Anyway,
Right.
you have enzymatic modification when you have the microbial process.
Yes, and it's an or. because the enzymes aren't necessarily biologically. So actually we need a second adjustment here to be ontologically pure, which is to add the revision of that definition too. Needs tweak to take out the needs a label tweak. Label tweak. It shouldn't. It should be microbial or or enzymatic modification process. I don't know if there was examples in there. I could suggest we add the example.
And this is allowed in your principle, to have this in the label. Yes, you can have the choice alternative label.
We can have a slash. Well, I don't like slashes because that's ambiguous about whether it's an and or. For ontology classes, they should spell out whether they're inclusive of both things or whether it's a conjunction or a disjunction of the two of the words. So here, this is a disjunction. It means that it can be microbial or enzymatic or both. But if you ever had a term that had the word and in it, that's implying that whatever the entity is, it has the characteristics of both.
Yes.
One and the other, and that's a conjunction. Okay, so what we want to do, a label tweak. Now, the logical or covers the and case in the ontology world. So we could just keep it simple and have an or there to convey the disjunction clearly. Okay, so I can see it's coming up to the end of the hour. Sarah, we haven't quite answered your question.
Don't forget about chocolate and coffee. This is great. Thank you.
Exactly.
But
So
you can have a look at the publication. I don't know if you know this publication. I think it would be interesting to rely on.
okay.
I think it is a serious job. Yeah, here in the chat, I put the DOI. I think it's already a good start.
Okay. Now, obviously everything takes time to follow up on. Sarah, do you want to follow up a little bit on this? One thing that we could do in the next session is actually, once we're agreed on these label and definition changes, we can actually go in, show the process of using Protege to change those in FoodOn.
Yeah, that would be great. It's not time sensitive. We had like a small report we were putting together on fermentation, which kind of like spurred this question back in August. And so, yeah, not a rush of any sort. But yeah, I can follow up on sussing out some more fermentation details.
Okay, so I'll add this to the agenda for the next call. I'm actually, let's see, in 2 weeks, I may not be available actually on a Thursday, which means we might have to reschedule the next call.
Yeah, it's also like US Thanksgiving.
Ah, okay, that's important too. Okay, so it sounds like we're gonna have to skip one call. and resume then in December. I'll check the dates there. We don't want to leave these FoodOn meetings to go too long if there are holidays and so on intersecting. So we might have an extra curricular date for the next meeting.
What I can suggest is if I can help something,
Yeah.
I can work on a spreadsheet where I can show you the different cheese families, and then we can add the information we need to say if it is fermented or non-fermented and so on, because we
Sure.
have to work on the on the spreadsheet.
Sure. Okay. To organize the material.
But where can you send me a link to say where I should add this spreadsheet?
Okay.
Or can I make a spreadsheet and then send you a file, an Excel file? I don't know.
Yeah. Is it okay to work in Google Sheets for you or
Yes,
no?
of course. Yes.
Okay. So we have a FoodOn robot tables spreadsheet online. So I'll add the link here.
Yes, you can
And,
remind me the link and then.
and that's where we can work on this.
Damien, would it be of use to identify other foods that are products of fermentation that are not labeled as such, like the examples that I proposed?
Yeah, it's an easy make work project. And yes, this would be good. There was tentatively talk of creating a separate fermented food work group, but I think keeping it within the FoodOn group is the best way to go for now.
Great.
So yes, so I will add a link to the spreadsheet here and we will task can encompass more categorizing all fermented fruits include fruits. Okay.
And so the next meeting is not on the 21st. That's it. You will send another
So
link.
the next meeting would ostensibly be the 28th. I'm going to be
28th.
away.
Okay.
Others, you're welcome to continue this without me. I feel like Magali and Sarah, if you were to lead, then you could probably make progress on this. The catch is it would sort of be up to Anusha maybe to show how to add or revise the definition for in the label for those two terms. Anusha, are you up to just sort of demoing with Protege how to do that?
Yeah, sure. I can do
Okay.
if we are planning to have that meeting.
Okay.
Yes, I would be happy to work to work with Protege and with robot templates also, but I am not able so far. But would be nice if Anusha, you can show me more in detail.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Right. So the
nice.
last question was, is the 28th a holiday or not for Americans? It is.
It is, yes.
It is, yes. Okay. Okay. So that would mean having the next curation in a month. Is that all right with everyone?
So the next one will be the 12th
The
of
12th.
December.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. We do have other, opportunities to communicate between now and then on projects. So, but we can move this one forward. All right.
I'd also be up for meeting in the interim if that, I mean, just to keep things on track. So like the 21st or the 5th also, but I don't have to push the meeting either.
Okay. Well, actually, I would welcome a curation meeting on the 5th. I could send out a note for that. I'll be back from my own little vacation then. Because yeah, I don't like these things waiting too long. I would even shift them to be weekly later, but yeah, let's talk about maybe adding the 5th as an extra day, meeting day. I will propose that we do that. Is that okay with everyone? Are most people's slots free, this 8 a.m. slot?
On 5th of December?
Yeah,
Okay, well, will you be available as well? I think that probably
can
will be
be.
on vacation.
Yes.
Okay, right, sure.
All right, then I'll send out a little notice that adds the 5th as an extra meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, folks. And see you in 3 weeks then.